What's going on, boys? It's day number 5, reading through the book of Ephesians. We are going to be picking up off of where we left yesterday in the section titled Instructions for the Christian Living. So this section was kind of cut in half as the Apostle Paul is covering these kind of choices that we should be making in the ways that we should go about living our lives as Christians. And that's actually going to be almost the majority of today's reading. We're going to read one more section about Christian households. I'm going to have one little kind of key point in there, but for today, we're going to be kind of covering this back half of the Christian living, as Paul kind of breaks it up into many different areas that I really feel is a stronghold and a very strong area that we should be focusing on, really through ourselves with Christ, before we go about having these relationships and friendships and all these things that we try to go out and get a grasp of. So I just want to say, Paul opens up with a just phenomenal first 2 verses, and it's just a very, eye-catching thing that you can't ignore. And he says in verses 1 and 2, he says, "Follow God's example, therefore, as dearly loved children, and walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us, and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God." So, Paul is saying we have to follow in Christ's footsteps, because when we do, we will be able to fulfill our lives with purpose and God's wrath, and we will be able to understand what God is calling us to do. We will be able to understand how God's love works for us, why things are so important, why the world is the way it is, why these things have to be the way they are, and why his creations are so important, more than just the colors in the world and the animals and the fish in the sea, just everything, how it all comes together, how everything just intertwines, and it all just comes together with God's love, that everything connects together. And we must be willing to do everything with love and kindness. So this isn't just going out and saying I love you to somebody. This is more of you go out and you are providing people with that next step. You are providing people with that hope that there is life in them, that there is a way to get out of whatever they are facing, whether it's depression or stress or loneliness or anger or hatred, whatever it is. You were telling them, look, there is a God who loves you, a God who is so good and is so caring that he was willing to step out of glory and give himself for us. He saw that humanity was, on its way to death. There was no way that humanity could save themselves from the sin that we deal with every day, from the slavery that we are chained to every day. So God said, I'm going to step down into reality. I'm going to live this perfect life and show you what it means to follow and what God really is. And that's the whole point of why Jesus came. Jesus came and showed us, God's personality, God's character. I was having this conversation with my mentor last night at my Bible study, and he was talking about, the whole reason Jesus came was because it wasn't to try and create these miracles. It was more of this is God's character. Jesus is God, but Jesus is also living that human life to where he's with us and, is able to understand, what we're going through. And he's telling us all these sermons and all these messages, this is God's personality. This is who God is. He's caring. This is how we should go about living our lives, going about loving our neighbor as ourselves, and, not hating our enemies, but loving our enemies, and, caring for every single portion of our families and our friends, because that's what makes us who we are. We are caring, we are loving, we are not hateful, we are not violent, we are not stressful. We are a species that was made to rule the earth. We were made to work as a team together, and a lot of people are so far from that, and that's what makes it so much more difficult for Christian living, is that you have to work really, really hard. I do believe that when becoming a Christian, Christians have the hardest lifestyle. People often say the opposite. People will be like, "Oh, Christians have easiest lifestyle. They don't have they're so easy. All they have to do is go to church and this and that. They do this and that. Their life's easy. Everybody likes them. They're nice to everybody." Well, not necessarily. Being a Christian, there are great moments. There is really great moments. But then there's also moments where you're at the bottom of the valley and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm stuck at the bottom of this canyon. I don't know how to get out. And that's where you have to trust. That same God who gave you all these, presenting you with these positive moments, is going to be the same God who's going to get you out of these low points. And that's where you have to trust and believe. And I promise you, it is true. I promise you that he will get you out of that destruction that you may be facing right now. So as I flip the page, I want to jump to verses 8 through 11, where the Apostle Paul covers, and he says, "For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Live as children of light. For the fruit of the light consists of all goodness, righteousness, and truth. And find out what pleases the Lord. Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them." So he's really pointing to this, affiliation with light. And light is more than just, what comes out of, the lights in your room, or the lights on your car, or the lights, to your phone or whatever. It's more than that. Light is this, feeling of being filled with something that is far greater than what you could ever do on your own. Light is this saving matter that when you are filled with it, you are made alive. Light is what makes us alive. Light is what makes us who we are. And when we connect directly with God, we are able to embrace that. Going back to early Genesis, the first thing that God did with the earth is he said, "Let there be light." And I do believe that light is what makes us who are. Light is what allows us to, go about, making those great opportunities work. And, when we go through the daytime's when we do all this hard work. It's when we do all the things, whereas when it's dark, we don't do much, and we are confused, and, we oftentimes try to do what we want to do because, there's no light. And I don't say it as like a, do good deeds in the daytime, and at nighttime you can kind of go do whatever you want. You can go and have all these fun parties and stuff like that. That's not what I'm saying. But oftentimes you do notice that people, when the sun goes down, they, think, well, I'm good. Like, I can just go do what I want now. Like, no, it's more than that. Light is something that fills you every day. And I know for me, it's something that, is kind of a hard grasp to get over. I will say that, today I did my second day of fasting. I do it, I'm doing it every Wednesday. Last week it was my first time ever fasting. I'd never fasted before, and so today was my second day doing it, and it was tough today. It was probably a little bit tougher than last week, just because, I was, at my house most of the day, and, being, in here, it puts a toll on you to where you're like, okay, like, I have access to food, but I have to tell myself no. And every time I went into the kitchen to fill up my cup with water, I was like, man, like, I just want, I want to have this one little thing. Like, I just want to have a yogurt, or I want to, just want to have, some sweet tea or whatever. Like, and I was just like, oh, like, I just can't do it. Like, I know I shouldn't do it, because if I do it, I'll have ruined the whole day. And that's the things we have to remember, is that don't let one thing ruin your whole day. Don't let one thing try and stand you down. Embrace those high points and those high moments, and allow yourself to be filled with the Spirit and move forward. Don't let the darkness consume you. Place that light on the darkness. Shine that light on those areas of darkness to say, God, this is what I'm dealing with. Can you help me with it as I'm wrestling through these thoughts or these past actions? Like, I need some guidance. I need some help. Like, I can't figure it out. Like, I'm trying to, swing the bat right now, and the ball's just going right through. Like, I can't. Like, I need some help. And this brings me down to what Paul says about doing good deeds. And I'm going to read this verse, and then I'm going to read a separate quote that I immediately thought of when I was writing down about this verse. It's verse 15 through 16. He says, "Be very careful, then, how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil." So, first of all, I was just saying in my notes, we have to do good deeds and put 100% of effort into everything. We have to, place ourselves and be like, all right, it's like it's either a yay or a nay. Like, I'm either all in or I'm out. That's how things are in life. It's never, I'm just going to put 50% in, or I'm going to put, 95, I'm going to put 99% in. No, it's either 0 or 100. That's how it is with life. And the quote that I thought of was a quote that was by a guy who we refer to in our group that we work out with as Papa Smurf. And he was a member that first founded F3 in Greenville back in 2015. And he Unfortunately, he passed away not too long after that. Never got to meet him, but from the stories that I've heard from my friends and just the impact that he had on our community was just an overall amazing experience. And every year they host an event called Coop Strong, which is an event to kind of memory of him, and a way of raising money for people dealing with hard diseases. I don't remember the exact disease that he was dealing with, but it really made me think back to this person who we think about today. And it was actually my team name that I ran last year when I ran in the Blue Ridge Relay up in the mountains in western North Carolina. And it made me think of the quote that he left on the community, and it goes like this: "Know that your life matters to many, so do good work, laugh every day, and press on." And I really encourage you to just take a second to let that sink in and realize that there are so many people that know you for a certain aspect, or know you for a way that you are, whether it's people at your work, or people at school, or people at work, or people in your family. People know you by a specific feature, and they know you by a specific action. And when they do, that's how they respond. And if you are not comfortable with that, then maybe you should really start to open up with them and be honest with people. Don't try and change yourself for one person to be this totally opposite person. Like, people want to know you for who you are. They don't want to know you by some fake thing that you say you do. And it's a hard thing to go by. But just do good work. Do your best. Forget the rest. And remember that we do things in life in order to fulfill these moments, to have these caring and loving moments, and the moments where we're able to laugh and have fun with our friends and our families, and just press on, as that quote says. Don't affiliate yourself with these bad works, whether it's the sexual immorality or lust, or smoking or drinking or stuff like that. Paul actually points it out again in verses 15 through 16. If you want to take a look, we must be willing to live by the Spirit and always give praise to Him during the good and the bad days. Always give Him praise. Don't just ask Him for help whenever you are falling into sin. Give Him praise when you were doing good. Because that's one way that you were able to thank God, and you were able to remember how hard you had to work to get to where you are. And then I want to read this one last verse that was in the second section for today that goes into tomorrow. It's about Christian households, and it's one verse I want to read. It's verse 33. It's talking about marriages. So I know I've covered marriages, and I think it was in Acts. So I'm not entirely familiar with marriages, because I'm only 18, and it's something that I hope that is not going to be for a little while, but it's something that I am looking forward to in the future. Paul says, however, each one of you also must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. So, this made me think of something, right away, is that we have to love ourselves before we can love others. And by loving ourselves, we have to allow to love Christ. When we give ourselves to Christ and let our old self die, we have to be willing to let Christ take our place in our hearts and love ourselves. Because you can't say that you're going to be like, oh, I can go take care of this person, I can go love this person, I can go do this, but yet you can't even take care of yourself. If you can't take care of yourself, and you're not able to be, disciplined and dependent and caring and supportive, how are you supposed to go out and take care of somebody else, let alone raise a family? And that's something that I, enjoy about recording these videos and reading, God's word, is that, I know every day, even if it may not seem like I'm learning, I know that God is working in me. He's working in me every single second of the day. When I'm awake, when I'm asleep, when I'm working, when I'm in school, every single day He's working in me, and He's working in you also, in many ways that may even be hard to believe. But that's what's important, is that things happen for a reason, and timing is key. Things will happen at the right time. And if you have questions, or you have concerns, or you're worried, that's where you ask God. And you say, God, I don't know what's going on. Like, help me with this unbelief that I have. Help me with, this concern or this confusion that I have. And I promise you, he will provide you with the context that you need. And he will provide you with those ways that you need to see what he has planned for you. And that is the end of today's word. I hope you guys are having a great week so far. I hope you guys are enjoying the weather. It's cooled off here in Greenville. But I really do hope you guys are having a great week. But just keep pressing on. And I hope to see you guys very soon. Peace out, boys.